ready, fight!
Hello and welcome to Design vs Podcast, where we explore a topic for a limited time before an invisible timer runs out and we all turn into mice. Who wrote this? This episode has been carefully planned with the help of the projects team. From the team I have with me is Project Delivery Manager, Faisal Kutwala. How are you, Faisal? Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to getting stuck in.
Yeah, nice to have you on the podcast. And alongside Faisal is Head of Projects, Tom Barrett.
Thanks for the invite.
Fellow
Good to be
Arsenal
here.
fan as well.
Yeah, well, repping today.
Thank you for being on. Guys, project managing. What do you guys do? What is it? How do you explain it?
Oh, I can't believe you don't know after 5 years. But
After 5 years, I still have no clue as to what projects do. I do. But I want you to answer it because...
for the benefit of the viewers.
Yeah.
I guess.
I always like to think it's like the Matrix. Everybody gets plugged in. Everybody gets plugged into the projects team.
Oof, wow.
We sort of manage what everybody does on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
We take the pressure away from knowing what needs to get done. We sort of take that pressure on,
Of course.
and we build that pressure into the system.
Well, I've had no pressure while I've been working, while you guys have been working away yourself. And there's also a head of
put some more
Coodworth as well,
pressure
who
on
works
him,
in
maybe.
your department too. So,
Load him up.
and the three of you work really efficiently and well together. So when you're explaining projects to people and getting into the nitty gritty of it, what are the first things that you like to get people to exercise when project managing and working through their workloads? Me as a designer, particularly, and we're going to take it from a design angle for this particular podcast, because one of the main things that, one of the challenges that we'll always have is working around our projects and getting things done on time and efficiently, and that's some of the stuff that we're going to be going through. So when you're approaching everyone in general, what are the first things that you want them to exercise when working on their work?
Well, I guess what we're trying to do, a lot of our job is resourcing, planning, task management. It's that type of project management. So I guess imagine yourself as a freelancer. You'd be sat there having to manage your own workload. You'd have to plan everything out yourself, control all of that. In this environment of being an agency, we want to set everything up for you because there's so much interconnected work. If you're a freelancer, maybe you've got a design project that's an individual project. You're not dependent on too many people.
No.
Maybe there's some outside influences, but you can pretty much do the thing you need to do when you're told it's ready.
Yeah.
Whereas in a agency environment, there's so many interdependencies, people to work, all that amazing stuff that comes with working in an agency. But obviously, that's a lot to coordinate. There's a lot of balances and things to factor in. So we try and take that off your plate and set everything up for you so that pretty much you can manage the client and spend your time on the creativity part rather than the admin part. A bit of admin, we don't want to completely take any sort of authority people have away from them, but trying to set you up with the best platform to deliver.
There's a sense of responsibility for everyone that they do their bit in terms of speaking to the right people, and sometimes we often confuse that by saying, well, projects, they'll handle that and tell us the direction.
Yeah.
You guys know as much as we know, I suppose, at the end of the day. So we got to clear that stigmatism about, oh well, projects will sort that out, and everything's just sort of hand fed to us. But no, it's and before I go on, have you guys worked with design agencies before, or is this the first time you've working with like marketing direct agencies where designers are involved?
Both of us are fresh to the agency world, aren't we, in the last 5 years?
Yeah, completely different to my previous experience. I've worked in a distribution management, so the projects are longer on a completely, like a project might take a whole year, so the scale is very, very different. Whereas with the agency world, it's really fast paced. You've got delivery output by the hour.
Yeah.
So it's very, very, very different. Just to touch on what Tom was saying earlier on as well, a large part of the work that we do is to allow you to focus on, let's just call it the 80-20% rule. So 80% of your time spent on your creative skill set, and then 20% is just purely just managing that task, that deliverable. So we want to do the 80% of managing all of that and allow you to do 80% of your creative output.
Right. Okay. And when I'm working away as a designer, 80% of my time possibly is design, or maybe even less. Like some of the time, it's the thinking, the idea side, the time where we're not physically. In a way, the execution is probably the bit that we actually do in work, where we're actually putting things together. That could take anything between 5 and 10 minutes, but the actual coming up with the idea could be the most substantial part of our tasks. And
Yeah.
did you, when you first came to working with designers, was that one of the sort of key challenges that you had? Because, and I'm assuming it's the same for other disciplines where you've got to understand their background. So what was the sort of challenge behind that for design in particular, especially when it came to execution and how long things take for a designer to do?
I think maybe for me, I thought about this a lot recently, because no one wants to be the person who restricts the creativity on a piece of work. And that was the thing. I hadn't been used to project managing very creative pieces of work, very like construction-y, very like, do this thing, do it in these set ways. Here's your SOP, standard work whatever you want to call these work instructions. When you follow those things, you will get your work done, and that is the right thing to do. Whereas that's not the case with design. It's not as black and white as you can set a structure. So I think for me, it was understanding what balance you can achieve between structure and creativity. And when you first come to it from the outside world, you think everything's the creative part. There's no structure. There's just free flow. You can't set any structure, but you can. You have to set some structure. You have to set the right tools, the right frameworks. You don't have to do everything from scratch. You might use a templated item on the top of your work to allow the full creativity and the rest of it. So you're not it's balancing off risk, is it? You're not going to spend like an hour on some really complex thing you've done before. So you don't then have the creativity for the rest of the thing you're trying to create. So it's balance, and that was completely new when I came into this.
The buzzword that I've used a lot was variables. There's so many variables for every design task we've got. You know, whether we're doing website work or whether we're doing the inbound stuff where we're producing infographics. Infographics take a lot longer because they're so illustrative. Ebooks, they can be step and repeat, but also sometimes a client might want something more designed. So those variables you've had to sort of and what kind of leeway, what kind of flexibility do we put in to allow for that to work? What sort of measures have we put into place for that type of thing?
I think what we're doing here is we're learning from experience. From my time here, I've learned that when it comes to design, like Tom mentioned earlier on, there's certain boundaries. So as long as you work within that boundary, you can be as creative as you want. But there's a structure, there's a framework, like Tom said. As long as you do it within that framework, then we're happy for you to be creative. They say, don't they? Creative people are either geniuses or insane, because you work you work against the grain, and you don't want to sort of shoehorn them into a side, say, okay, this is the way you work and that's the way you do it, because everybody's different. Everybody has a different skill set. So allow creative people to feel free, so they can, provide the best piece of work. And then to answer your question about infographics and being flexible, like I said, we learn from experience. So once we build a certain amount of infographics, we realize how long it takes, what the process is, what creative time you need, and that sort of stuff. We're learning. We're constantly learning. We're constantly evolving. It's not. I think it's like that in an agency life, isn't it? It's not. This is the way you do it. This is how it's. This is the way it's always done. This is how all agencies do it. So, and we're happy to do that, aren't we? We regularly discuss how long things should take. Is there a good way to do it? Is there a faster way to do it? Is there an efficient way to do it? Is there a slow way to do it? That sort of stuff.
Yeah, I want to put a pin on what you just said then, just because I've got something else I need to discuss with you. But when we're working through all our tasks, and we're working directly with clients, and so the clients are going to have expectations. And there's two parts to that expectation. One is when the deliverable gets to them, and the other part of it is the subjective side, which is managing their expectations of what they're actually going to receive. So what I mean by that is, are they happy with the design as well? So it's the timeliness of the delivery, and it's the quality of the delivery too. And from designer, we work to deadlines at the end of the day, and all we're trying to do is get the work done as efficiently as possible. how do we go about setting these deadlines with a client in the first place? What sort of peace of mind do we offer the clients when we're going about doing this?
I think it kind
especially with the, like, for example, the website work is probably your best sort of thing to take on this.
Well, I think it's learning from experience. So how many rollouts of websites, of downloads, of inbound campaigns have we done as an agency? It's so many. So we've got all this wealth of experience and data to pull upon, so that when we're setting those deadlines, while we can't always give you the 100% deadline that the final thing will happen, we can give you a projected timeline broken down into quite a lot of detail based on that experience, and give you a sense of, if this doesn't happen, then this is what it could mean for the project. And that is the best way I personally think to work with people. And Faisal does this a lot day to day, showing those expected timelines. And we've done the design for the key pages of a website in one day. Sometimes we've had big ones that are large amounts of pages, and it might take 3 days. And knowing the scope of the work you've been given and having all that data, then you can refine your plans accordingly.
Of course, and we work on various different sizes of websites and microsites, and sometimes single page sites and launchpad sites that we're trying to produce the clients too. When we come to producing design work and we show the clients the works, sometimes they come back with feedback. Often what happens is we do we make amends to the feedback, and then they have more changes. Do you want to talk about our round of amends and how we sort of try and police that? I mean, rather than say police, how we control that, but because we've got a gated process. Do you want to just go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think if we're talking specifically about web projects, let's use web projects as an example.
Yeah.
So the client wants to go on a journey.
Yeah.
They want to see it from, let's use January to April as an example. The client has a deadline, and I think all of this is managing expectations, isn't it?
Yeah.
The client's got expectations.
Exactly.
We've got expectations from the client. And within our company, everybody has expectations from the design team, the web team, the dev team. For the client, they'll have expectations from the MD to the finance team to the marketing team. So everybody's trying to manage expectations.
Yeah.
So there's a timeline. And as Tom said earlier on, it's like building houses, isn't it? If you've built so many houses, you know how long these houses are going to take.
Yeah.
Roughly, you can give a rough timeline and say, okay, we know we can do this in X amount of time, and so forth. And sort of, so what we do is we sort of plan that out with the client. And when it comes to the design side, this is where things get a bit creative and it can get a bit out of hand. And this is where we sort of want to have a structure and a framework. And we have that, don't we? In our processes, in our gated processes, what we allow for is a round of amends, a couple of round of amends, where we say, we'll take your initial feedback, we'll have a discovery call, we'll understand what it is that the client wants us to do, we'll go ahead, we'll design it, and we'll come back, we'll provide that to the client, give them an opportunity to give us some feedback, bring it back in-house, action those, implement that feedback from the client, give it back to the client, and just wait for final approval, and try and close that within a gate. What we don't want to do is lose sight of the big picture.
No.
What we want to actually do is build that house or have that website live, and we can get stuck in the design side, isn't it? Because this is one area, like copy, where it can be a bit subjective from our side, from the client side, and you can get lost in the logos and the colours and the design. It's right, it's 100% right, you've got to get it right, but this is probably an element where if we do the work before we even start the web project, and we really take time to understand the client and what it is that they're looking to do and what they want the visual side of the website to look like, we can maybe minimize those round of amends as you're asking.
And this is where, go back to the beginning of the podcast, where you do take that pressure off other people when you're doing that, because you've got that structure in place, you've got some guesstimates of how long things take, and you know how the process starts to work. And for me as a designer, seeing that process a lot, I've come from backgrounds where there's not been any project manager involved at all. We're project managing on our own. So forgive me for not coming from a project managing background, I guess, to previous employers, but you know, this has become so much more of a better way of working. And alongside what we do here with the round of events, we often even try to push back, especially with GDD work. We tend to sort of say, with growth-driven design, we'll do some more elaborate stuff later on, but we want to get some of these projects out on time for a deadline.
I like that. I really like that approach. And if sometimes I think to myself, if I am the client and I'm in the client's shoes, and I'm paying an agency or a creative outlet to provide some, creative design work, I want them to push me back and say, actually, we think this is the best idea, or we think that's the way to do it, or that's the best design based on scientifics, based on something.
Yes.
Do you understand? Because I can, if I'm the client, sometimes I can give my opinion, and that might not be the right thing for me, and that's what we're paying the agency for. And I really like that, where we push the client back, educate the client why we think this is the right way to do it. And I think clients appreciate that.
Yeah, they do. I think all of this, the managing the rounds of amends, the advising the client, it's throughout the business. So when you're in the agency side as well, the sales team need to be aligned with this. The account managers in various names need to be aligned with this. The project managements, the people working on the front line who might talk to the client. Everyone's given the same expectations and the reasoning why, not just we don't want to do it. No, this is why we believe this. Trust us, we think it's the best thing for you. We're willing to stick our hat on this and say it's the right thing to do for you. And I think everyone's well aligned on that, and that's why it works.
Yeah, I agree. We're not saying no because for the sake of saying no.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, yes, the data-driven work is by far the most important thing, not just for design but for everything that we've been doing. People see the results and get excited. It's patience to sort of wait it out and sort of hold that nerve that we've been talking about for years, to all the clients that we've had, and to any upcoming client, that this is part of what we're doing, is to try and improve your business and get you the results that you need. There's an element of patience involved and trust in that process that it's going to work out.
You got to build it, haven't you? For the first maybe 3 to 6 months, build that trust up, and then hopefully get a bit more freedom.
Yeah, exactly. And all that works because we try to nail down efficiencies in house and try to create a sort of a, the term tossed around is a well-oiled machine, I suppose, throughout each department. And we've even in the last couple of weeks, we've had instances where we go back to the process constantly to try and find more efficiencies that we can.
Sometimes I think about that. So I've been here close to 3 years now, and I look at some of the processes from the day I started to now. We are constantly improving them, and it's funny how sometimes you get to us. Well, I didn't spot that. How come we didn't spot that 6 months ago? How come we didn't spot that 18 months ago, 24 months ago? So like what you're saying, just touching on that. It is that, isn't it? It's constant improving, evolving. Somebody comes in, somebody has a new idea, and it's like, oh yeah, I didn't see it that way. And everybody has a different perspective or different idea on improving something. The main thing is, as Tom said earlier on, is no mixed messages.
No.
And if we do that in terms of when we're working with clients, like in terms of round of events and stuff, everybody's on the same page. We know exactly what we're doing. We're one team. And again, when it comes to improving processes internally, there are no mixed messages.
No,
we're all on the same page. We can really work. It can work quite well.
Yeah. Me personally, when I am working away throughout any project, I think one of the key things that even all designers will agree with me is that brief has to be clear. That message, no mixed messages. We don't want one person saying one thing and another person saying another thing, but at the same time, we don't want no brief at all, or we don't want a vague brief where it's just not enough information to go off. So efficiencies there have always been a challenge. But again, project management, you come in, you sort of say, well, before you even get the project booked in, like, consider what you want in the first place. We'll tell you how long it's going to take. You can decide whether it's even worth the time. I guess in itself is an efficiency, because someone's work can also be shared with another. So by that, what I mean is a designer has skills that are set needed. Specifically, we need design work for designing the websites and creating the ebooks and things. a designer can also produce the templates, but then someone else in the department, not in the department, but in the wider team, can be producing other assets based off those templates. So efficiency like that have been really key to what we've been doing.
It's all down to the people who are asking the questions when they're accepting the work for you, isn't it? So there's obviously where we're going to use this piece of design that's going to drive maybe image size, etc. But then there's brand guidelines, and it never hurts to ask: does this one follow the normal brand guidelines? You might assume yes, but maybe every now and again the answer might be no. So you have to check every time so that you've got the full scope of what needs doing. And it's better to have it said that it's the same as normal and you've got total creativity and have that known, rather than assuming you've got that, and then when it hits to the client, they're wondering why you've gone rogue and not followed what they had in mind. So you have to ask. You just have to ask those few extra questions.
Absolutely. Now, before I go on to the next bit, efficiency versus creativity. On the one hand, we manage expectations and deadlines through, again, getting a rough idea of how long things take and getting an average time and saying, right, this is how much it's going to be, how long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost to do. The efficiency side, from design, and this is design versus project, but often there are occasions where we do sort of say, well, I think you asked this question yesterday, wasn't it? What is the reason why you don't really get something done on time? And one of my first thinking was, I needed more time because I've not been able to express myself creatively enough. How do we manage that? Like, how do we sort of go about saying? Do we just say, all right, we'll let you off this time, but next time we need to make sure that you're working a bit more efficiently to get that creativity? Or do we just sort of give that leeway, and do we say, hey, well, fair enough, this time around you've needed a bit more time to be a bit more creative? What are your thoughts to that?
I think the first thing I was going to say was, it's impressive that you guys do deliver on time. It's impressive that if we look at some of those historical tasks, like downloads or designing key pages or designing rollouts for the websites or designing infographics, over time we've understood how long these things should take on an average. And when we go back and run the numbers and you see the data, and say, well, it does take that amount of time, which is interesting. I really like to see that. It's impressive, and I think it's a credit to you and your team that you guys do deliver according to the expectations set. These timings evolve, isn't it? But going back to what you're saying about in terms of managing efficiency versus managing creativity, if you let the creative juices completely loose, it might take way more time than we plan, the client plan. Remember, we're an agency, it's so fast, there's so many different projects, there's so many different downloads to create. So it's a case of delivering exactly what the client expects, allowing you to feel free and do the creative work as well. But again, within a structure, there's a time we have to deliver. Otherwise, we can just go on and on and on and on. And on.
And you compare that to the manufacturing industry, or where things need to be improved in terms of times. A question I want to add is, should we ever be scraping time, or i.e., do we need to cut down time for designers because we need to get things done a lot more efficiently? Or is it more a case of, no, leave that time frame for the designers to have that creativity?
There's a balance, isn't there? Efficiencies are great, and I'd rather gain the efficiencies in the more technical parts of the project rather than the design parts of the project. I think if there's ever instances where you're working on something and you've just got this amazing creative idea and you really want to run with it, it's always comms, isn't it? It's always coming back to say, guys, I've got this thing. Do you think this could fit for this project, time-wise, cost-wise? Maybe we absorb the cost for the client this time because I think this would be an awesome experience for us as a business and for our portfolio. And if we have that conversation in the moment and think that that's a good thing to do and we have the time for it, then we do it.
Well, I'm on that as well as when we have sometimes actually when we have got a creative idea that we already know in our head, actually it takes less time to do because you know what you want to do and you say, oh, but I guess when you say that, it's how big of an idea is it that you want to execute it, and if it's something very illustrative, always has been an issue where time can become a factor in that. Whereas if it's something more minimalistic in terms of the style of design, but the creative idea is still already there. If I said to you, "Oh, I can create 3 ebooks," and I've done it in one day, as opposed to one ebook across 4 or 5 hours. It's always down to, I guess, what we're trying to deliver for that specific client, and at the same time, the efficiencies has been sort of exercised, because it could be that the person is performing to a level on that day. Maybe do you get what I'm trying to say?
Too much coffee in the morning, maybe.
Exactly.
You know?
But the creative
It's one of
juices are
those
just
days
really
where you're just
exactly
on it.
So I don't know if that's the variable as well that can also be played into
True.
this.
The thing I'm always conscious of is we are all marketers. As a project manager, we're marketers. As a designer, you're marketers. Everyone in the business, and we're always trying to always bring myself back to what's the end result for this. What does it need to achieve? Does it need to generate leads for this website? And you've got that dual responsibility, haven't you? You've got to deliver on results, but you've also
it's got to look good.
It's got to look good, and it's got to be a wow factor as well. And it's a balancing those two things up at the same time, and making sure we also hit the other part of the bargain and the contracts we've got with the piece of work.
It's a bit like Arsenal, this, isn't it?
No, don't bring Arsenal into this.
Look good on paper, they play well, it looks nice, it's tick-a-tack here and there, pass there, but they don't seem to deliver anything.
I can't believe I set him up for this.
Yeah. Well, we're in shit, but we're going to cut that bit out. Right? Anyway, no. I got one final question, I think, before we move on to the next segment, is what's probably the best way to ask this question, but what's the biggest challenge that you've had working with the design department that also applies to all other departments? What's the thing that you want people to exercise more as individuals rather than just... I know one of the key ones was making sure that we're always logging time, because that's...
It's not, for me, it's not that. It's not the time logging. It's just we're in a department where we are responsible for supporting you and the wider team. So we want to make sure you feel supported, and we want to make sure that we're giving you everything you need to do what you need to do.
Okay, yeah.
Ultimately, that's what we're here for. We're here to provide a workspace where we want to take the hassle and the headache out of... we touched on briefs and this kind of thing. We don't want you to have to sit there and chase around the office for a brief and that sort of stuff. We want to make sure the system and everything is set up, and your day-to-day workspace is set up that you can just deliver.
Exactly.
I think you hit the nail on the head. We want to know when it's not right, and that's the hardest thing. People sometimes feel like it's a personal slight on you if they raise that the thing that they need to do might be missing from this job. But you want to know. You want to know if that template's out of whack, or if that process failed in that time. You want that person to have everything they need, and like having that relationship built on you, that you can push back and be frank with that person. And Bilal can walk up to me and say, "Tom, that brief wasn't good enough," and you can sit down for half an hour, come up with a new briefing process and update your task request forms. That's when the relationships become stronger with people.
Exactly that. It's just a why. If we talk about briefs, then we just want to know why that brief is not right. Well, is there no structure to the brief? What is it that you need to know for the brief, so that we can sort of implement that in the system, so we don't have those issues again and again and again moving forward.
Brilliant. I like that answer. We're going to do the quickfire round now. Part of the Design Versus podcast. Now, forgive me because I've not quite prepared this the way I thought I would have. But the example question I always use...
Well, on that note, you might not get the answers that you want then.
Well, that could be win-win for both.
We might need to edit the intro about this being more prepared as well.
So an example question, which a lot of people tend to answer straight away for some reason, but as an example, I would say something like, who is a better designer, me or Dave? And you would say, obviously, what your answer is, but you'd say it quickly.
All
Very-
right, so Bilal.
All right. Right.
Oh,
Okay.
thank
Cool.
you,
So
Tom.
let's go.
Oh, I love that. No, I
I'm
appreciate
on
it.
your podcast. When I'm on Dave's podcast, maybe I'll
Do
get a
it.
different answer.
Dave will never do a podcast as long as I'm around.
It's obviously
Okay.
Bilal. Sorry, Dave.
So, some of the questions that I've got here then. You ready for this? Okay.
Let's go.
Opening a new tab or in a new window?
New tabs.
Window.
New window? Oh, okay. That's new. Single scroll websites or multi-page websites?
Multi-page. I like more options.
I don't think that's what a multi-page website. Multi-page. I mean, those websites that are single page, which is just one long web page, which goes from one part to another,
Versus a multi-page.
versus a multi-page.
Sorry. Explain the difference between the two again.
Not got time for that.
All
Yeah,
right.
multi-page.
There's the answer.
Multi-page.
Okay,
There
so
you
you
go.
did say that, but I don't think you understand what. Okay. So sorry.
Cut that bit out.
Okay, no, put that in. Would you rather run a marathon or climb one of the highest mountains in the world?
I know your answer.
I'm going to say climb, obviously.
Climb.
You'd climb as well. Okay.
Yeah, marathon's a long time.
John, would you rather climb a mountain or? Yeah, yeah. He's just got the arms for it, so he'd actually scale the mountain with his.
Yeah, just pull himself up.
Yeah. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You have to drop one forever. Which one do you drop?
None of them. They're already dropped.
Yeah, similar answer.
Wow,
Drop
okay.
them all.
Drop them
Alright.
all.
Easy.
Too busy to be
Keep
cool.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, keep LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Keep LinkedIn.
We're project managers.
Okay, yeah. No, I can't argue with that. Mobile first or desktop first? This is a more design related question.
It's got to be mobile, surely.
Yeah.
Mobile. I think so too.
Okay.
The amount of time you spent on your mobile scrolling websites. Mobile first, I think.
I don't own a tablet.
Yeah.
Of my own. My child has a tablet.
Okay.
But I don't have my own tablet.
But you don't have your own tablet.
It's alright. It's a mobile first, easy.
Fair
answer for
enough.
me.
What was the question? Tea or coffee?
T.
Coffee.
Okay. A night in or a night out?
19.
Out.
Wow.
Out.
Are you just answering the opposite to what he's saying?
Well,
Well, that's part of the strategy, but I, do like I would prefer to go out.
Okay. Again, not being prepared on this one, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how creative are you?
8.
Okay, very bold answer.
9.
Confident, even not 9, even more higher.
Some of my
You'd be
ideas are a
su-
bit odd.
Yeah, but
and
you'd be
the team that I
surprised.
work with know that.
It's
but
all subjective
there's
at the
also
end of the
good
day.
ones in
So,
there.
yeah. But it shows you both confident. Very good, very good. I'll reveal the answers to all your questions at the end of this podcast. You're
In
doing
the
all right so
comments.
far. Favorite thing about working at Digital 22?
Food. Food on the table, the spread.
Okay, yeah, it's a new answer that I've not heard yet. Food, okay.
Growth. Business growth.
Okay,
And
yeah.
personal
This is
growth.
a strategic answer.
That's my official answer.
Official.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. One of you is doing very well, and that's. Actually, that is all I've got to ask there. It looks because I have not prepared this properly. So
Structure
I've
or
thrown in-
freestyle?
Hey, yeah.
I'll ask the question. Structure or freestyle?
Structure or freestyle.
Freestyle.
I don't want to get into something like what's your favorite project managing software. I don't know if I
No,
can even
who's
ask
your
that.
favourite project manager? Tom.
Who's-
Oh,
Basil.
that's a good question.
Oh, I like you both, guys. Come
You're
I
sitting on the
committed for
fence.
you.
on.
You can have me
You
after
can't, you
this.
can't sit on the fence.
Do you know what? For the
Don't
fact
be a
that
politician.
Tom actually supports
Arsenal, it's an
football
Arsenal
club,
thing, is it?
Yeah, well, he's repping the colours. I mean, if you wore the your
Quick fire questions for Bilal. Websites or downloads?
Oh, I love it.
Oh wow! Okay,
What do you
this is
prefer
a
to
turn of
design?
events. Yeah, I'll say websites.
Colors or shapes? Would you like to be more creative in when you're designing something? In the colors or in the shapes?
Screw it. I'll say shapes.
Go on, I've got one. Hats or shoes?
Oh, I'm more of a hat kind of guy, but I do love trainers.
Yeah, that's
so-
why I asked. I thought it might be a
Yeah,
bit
so-
torn.
But I'm more of a hat kind of guy. Yeah. What just happened? Anyway,
We're taking over your podcast.
yeah, it looks like it. Projects have taken over the Design Versus Project. But before they do, settle a debate as the final part of this podcast. I asked you guys to come up with a debate that you want to settle once and for all. You said, what makes a good cup of tea? And that's what they came up with.
I think it's a question of speed versus quality, isn't it? I'm going for quality of tea. I like to take my time, pouring the water in, pouring the tea bag in, letting the tea steep, take time with it. I'll sit there, I'll clock watch, I'll scroll my phone. It can be a good 5 minutes.
Tom, do you do the same as this?
No. So I
So-
suspect me revealing this is going to be a damning indictment on my character, but I'm all about just get that tea done, ready, back to my desk. So you'll often see me put the tea bag in, pour the water in, I hold the tea bag with the tip of my fingers so that I can do as quickly as, I don't want a spoon. Spoon's going to slow me down. I quickly dip it. I put the milk in while the tea bag's still in there, which I believe is a bit of a no-no. And then I quickly, as soon as it's got enough of a colour, whiz it, neck it, back to work.
Do you guys put sugar in your tea?
I do.
Not anymore, no.
Not anymore. Okay, because I put the sugar in with the tea bag. That's more efficient, I think. And I know sometimes what happens is what you need to do, you need to put more sugar in because when you put the tea bag in with it, some of the tea bag absorbs the sugar.
Sugar granules,
So
yeah.
that's why I put a little bit more sugar in it. I
Lavish
think.
that.
I've been project managing my own cup of tea.
You've been thinking
Yeah.
it through.
Yeah.
I once did we used to do Lean Six Sigma at my old place, and there was a project that was done, and I remember checking it over, and it was about the best way to make a cup of tea, exactly how to have the station set up for the most efficient process.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it could be a project. for
everyone
you.
has a ritual as well when it comes to making a cup of tea. You got your cup there and your kettle's ready and it's all nearby and it's all efficient.
I think our workstation needs a project on it.
I'm
It's
really
not quite
proud
as
of this
efficient.
debate because you made it relevant to projects yet again, despite it just being making a cup of tea. I'm really can't honestly credit where credit's due. Tom and Faisal, you both have your own podcast, projects podcast.
Managing digital projects.
Is that-
Find it on YouTube.
Yeah. What's your upcoming episode about?
Got 2 projects coming up. One should be talking about deadlines. What makes why are deadlines so important? And then we've got another project coming up, which is all about communication. Should be a really quick one. What is a good method of communication?
What we value the most is going to be the key thing there.
Excellent. Really big thank you for you both to come on this podcast, and I hope to have you guys on again as guests.
Yeah, anytime. It was really enjoyable.
Yeah, the only thing I just want to mention before we finish off is, can we try and start the next one on time?
So that's all we have time for today's podcast.
Pull up his overdue.
Thank you for listening to Design Versus Podcast. If you enjoyed this debate, stay tuned for more, and until then, see you guys next time.